So, this is my first Periscope, sort of. I ended up doing one somewhat impromptu because a webinar that I was doing, we had technical difficulties, and Denise Duffield Thomas, one of the people that I've learned a lot from and that I enjoy watching on Periscope, had a little bit of a webinar snafu, so she jumped on Periscope and I kind of did the same thing, but this one is one that I'm doing for real, and this is one that I decided that I wanted to do as kind of a part of the way that my business is shifting and changing a little bit. One of the things that happened when I found the place that I'm living with my husband Jim now is that there was a hibiscus bush in the front. And if you're a Montessori person, you know that the hibiscus is kind of cool because it is the flower that we use in little diagrams on cards to teach the children about the different parts of it, and it's very beautiful. So it was kind of a fun thing for me to find that in our yard, and so I decided I would have that with me on my little Periscope, this one, the first official one that I'm doing. And one of the reasons that I'm doing the Periscope is because I am in a little bit of a transition with the way that I am putting my work out into the world. I am still very much a part of supporting the Montessori community, and some of you who may know me from the Montessori community know that one of the things that's really important to me is that educators prepare themselves to be with the children, and that's what I'm focusing on in this, as well as how it relates to the next pieces that I'm doing. Now, if you're familiar with Montessori, this is a book that you would be familiar with, the Absorbent Mind, and you can tell I like it a little bit, actually a lot. I do consider it to be one of Maria Montessori's most important works and probably her masterwork. It's not the one I suggest you start with if you're new to Montessori, but I do think it's an amazing book. And I read it for the first time when I was pregnant with my son, who is now grown and has an 8-year-old son of his own. And the reason that I am referencing you to that is that the 28th chapter, the one right after the preparation of the teacher, is love and its source, the child. And I believe that anyone who is looking at Montessori for a homeschooling approach, for the education that they want to provide for their child by sending them to a school, or anyone who wants to include Montessori in the way that they approach parenting, needs to recognize the role of love in this important philosophical approach. And I do believe that Maria Montessori was as much a philosopher as an educator and a physician, among the many roles that she had. And I'm going to quote just a little something from here to help you understand why I believe it's so important that we as adults, as educators or parents or grandparents, find ways to work from a place of love, find ways to recognize how to treat children with a radical level of respect that really touches their hearts and protects their hearts. And if you're not familiar with the idea of the absorbent mind, one of the examples that frequently people give to folks who are not Montessori people is the idea of language. If you have ever heard anyone speak a language that they were exposed to when they were 5 or 6 or younger, and then heard another person who didn't learn that same language until much older, you can almost always tell the difference because of the way that the person who learns a language at age 6 or younger takes those sounds of the language into their being, into their brain and their mouth and everything else. And that is what the absorbent mind is. The absorbent mind is the idea that from the time that a child is born until the child is around 6, that there is a very special kind of way of working with the experiences that come into a person, that there's a special way of just absorbing all that's coming into them and being able to then use that and master it. If you talk to a child in their native tongue, nobody taught them about grammar or syntax or anything, but they just use these things perfectly as they were modeled. So if perfectly grammatical English or French is what is modeled to the child, then they speak with perfectly grammatical English or French. If what is modeled is not perfect, then they perfectly reproduce what was modeled to them. So on page 284 of the Absorbent Mind, it says, the Absorbent Mind welcomes everything, puts its hope in everything, accepts poverty equally with wealth, adopts any religion and the prejudices and habits of its countrymen, incarnating all in itself. This is the child. And if it were otherwise, the human race would not achieve stability in any of the different quarters of the earth. So for society to function, the child has to just absorb whatever is presented. And if the environment that you create for that child is full of love, if the example that you set for that child is one of opening your heart and living in that way, that's what the child is going to absorb. Sadly, if it is non-grammatical language or ugly prejudices about other people that are given to the child during that time, that's what he or she will absorb as well. So I encourage you, if you're an educator, a parent, someone who's thinking to become a parent, if you want to interact with children or anyone in any way, look for ways to learn to work from a heart-open space. Learn to be that heart-open individual that you would like to see the children that are around you becoming. Trying to figure out how to turn it off. There we go. Bye. Well, I couldn't see any of the hearts.
Oh, stop.